Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Political Vigilante Library Edition. We are godless socialists here using our tax dollars in this library room. It's free. It's a conference room, so
we're socialists and we're cheap.
Socialism is a pompous way of saying you're cheap. I'm a socialist. Oh, he's cheap. That's what that means. So I'm here with Jennifer Briney from Congressional Dish, and which is a podcast you guys should listen to, where you basically tell everybody what it is. You break down.
Yeah, I read a lot of bills and I read laws and I watch a lot of hearings, so I'll kind of summarize what's going on in those for you. But
that sounds exciting.
Yeah, it's more fun than you would think, actually. But yeah, I'm just looking at what's going on in Congress, and not from a perspective of like I'm on either side of anything, but just like, what are you doing with my money and in my name? And I also will throw in jokes and just kind of have fun with it. So
let me ask you this, because I ask this question a lot of people who are doing independent media and tracking what's really going on, and have sort of woken up to the reality that the two parties are not that different from one another, and there's just a lot of corporate war and stuff that's happening in our name. So when you find this stuff and you see the hidden bills that are really just to support the NSA or just to move America's corporate interests, and like, how do you, because I asked this question because I wrestle with it doing this show, and I want to hear what other people out there in independent media are doing. How do you cover all this stuff without just going, oh, we're done, okay, cool, like let's punch out, the human race is over?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question, because sometimes it's really hard, and I have had really, really low points because I've been doing this for 5 years now, so it's been rough. And I think one of the ways I do it in the day-to-day is I go outside, which is really important. I moved back to California a few years ago. I was living in Boston, so winters were rough. But now that I can actually go outside, I have a paddleboard, so I go out on the water, and I just kind of remind myself, like, the things are not great in the government, but in my day-to-day right now, like, this is beautiful. I'm lucky to be here. And so I kind of do that type of spiritual thing. I also go back into my emails and my letters, because every letter that I've been sent, I've either saved or scanned. I've started scanning them now. But I'll go back and read them.
You mean from like followers or listeners?
Yeah, from my listeners. Well, they'll send me stuff, and I have high school students that are, not only listening to my podcast, but funding it and saying, I was never interested before, and you've gotten me interested, and I'm going to vote. I can't wait to vote. And people that have said that I'm 65 and I've never voted before, but you convinced me to do it. That makes me feel like I'm doing something, and it's not just me getting my own frustrations out. I feel like in my own small way with my audience, like, we're doing something. And I also found, because I tried to just kind of go back to not caring. I tried to put that genie back in the bottle. I actually moved to Waikiki and started waiting tables, and I took years and just like played. I had so much fun, but I couldn't stop reading books, and I just felt like if I wasn't doing something, that's when I couldn't sleep. At least now I can sleep because I'm doing something. It hasn't been effective in any way. In fact, since I started doing this, everything's gotten worse. But I'm doing something.
I would say this. I would argue with you that it is effective in terms of you're waking people up, you're getting people involved, and it doesn't have the effectiveness. And I say that because I've had the same, like, what's the point? I'm talking into my phone in a goddamn library. Like, what is this? Nothing is going to change.
Yeah.
But then, like you say, the letters, and then people saying to me, and you just said it. You've heard the same thing of like, I didn't know this. Now I'm getting involved. I've had so many people on this show go, oh, I'm involved in my local government now. I'm going door to door for this progressive candidate that's running against an incumbent. I'm working on this person's campaign, or I just, I canceled my cable and I'm only getting my news from independent news sources.
Nice.
So, and like, I'm a surfer too. I have to be in the water.
Yeah.
Otherwise I go nuts.
It helps.
So, well, let me ask you this specifically. What was one of the lowest points that you had? What prompted the lowest point, and then how did you get out of it?
Actually, about this time last year, right after the inauguration, was really, really rough on me, because I didn't vote for Hillary Clinton. Like, just after Libya and the way she was talking about Syria during the campaign, I mean, we were going to double down in there. We were going to real war, and I was watching the generals. I know the generals that she was going to hire. I've seen them in hearings. I know exactly who they are. Jack Keane in particular. And I just couldn't vote for that. And so people got really upset with me for that. And that's what's kind of crazy too, is that my show was all about Congress. I did one show in the primaries and one in the general talking about the presidential race, and I just took so much heat.
Because you voted for, who'd you vote for in the
I
general?
voted for Jill Stein.
Yes. Yeah,
And I was told that I was a traitor to my gender too, and I was like, I voted for a woman. I just didn't vote for yours. Like,
that is the most maddening thing that I hear, because when I hear that and I'm confronted with that sort of, those like neoliberal feminists, I go, wait a minute. So did you vote for Sarah Palin to be the first female vice president? Did you spit in the face of feminists when you didn't? Why didn't you? Well, I didn't like her policy. Okay, say that part again.
Yeah.
And it's so maddening to me. And then it's like Hillary Clinton she's a warmonger. She's a corporate war machine.
Yeah.
And Jill Stein, if you call yourself a liberal, she is everything you would want.
Yeah. And it's not even like I refuse to label myself.
Right.
And it's actually kind of fun because it allows me to find the common ground with literally every label, which has been really, it's eye-opening. As soon as you get rid of the labels, you can talk to anybody. So I love that thing. But Jill Stein, I spend a lot of time in the ocean, so I want to protect that water. I also like drinking water and drinking clean air, or breathing clean air. And just
you're one of these clean water lovers.
Yeah, I'm
weird.
crazy like that. And the anti-war stuff, so she just more aligned with me. I live in California. Like, I voted how I voted, and just the amount of people getting so angry at me, and then I didn't march in the Women's March, and actually said that the idea of protesting an inauguration was so disgusting to me, no matter whose it is. But the fact that they did it on day one, had they scheduled it for 1 week later, Trump would have done something. The Muslim ban, we would have had a thing to stop. But protesting inauguration felt really ugly to me, and I said it on the air, and just the barrage of shit that I took for it was about 4 months before it really died down. And it just kept coming and coming and coming, and that was really hard for me to handle. Where it's like, I'm trying to pay attention to Congress and just being sucked into the sideshow, and I thought about quitting for a while. I was like, why am I doing this to myself? I can make money waiting tables too. But I kept going, and I think that was the hardest thing I've done, is I just kept doing it when I just didn't want to. Mm-hmm. I read the letters. I started listening more to the ones the people that were supporting me, instead of taking in the negative ones so much, and I kept going. And now it's gotten better. And actually, this last Women's March, I spoke out against this one too, because it was on the first day of the shutdown, and it wasn't supporting the Democrats and it was a flawed idea, the way they tried to help the DACA kids, but they were trying. And so to see, I'm reading the defense authorization while they're shutting down the government, and then there's a giant march the next day that had nothing to do with either of those things. So I found out that we have troops on the ground in at least 20 countries. I'm still not done counting, but I found at least 20.
20.
So I'm finding this out.
Troops are in active combat.
On the ground. Still not sure exactly what that means. And all over Africa. That's what's crazy. And I haven't gone quite down that rabbit hole yet.
There's a lot of natural.
Keep shutting down the government, so I haven't had the time. But just to look at so much war and so much irresponsibility in Congress, and the Democrats trying to do this thing, and then this march with no goal stated. I'm still upset about it. It's such a wasted opportunity. And this time, I've only had this episode out for 48 hours, but it's been overwhelmingly positive response. This time, the same people that were mad at me last year are saying, I didn't agree with you last year, but I see what you're saying now. So I'm glad I stuck with it, because I'm over the arc, and I'm now seeing that they didn't want to hear it then, but now they're seeing it, and I'm not taking the type of heat that I've been expecting since I released that episode. So yeah, it's just sticking with it.
So is Congressional Dish your job? It's your primary source of
full time.
It's your full-time job.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the fans has been for 5 years.
And the fans are supporting you, and
yeah. Oh yeah.
Well, you were the one at PodFest. You came to the Los Angeles Podcast Festival 2 years in a row, but you came this past October, and you were the one who said, "Oh yeah, I just haven't," because I was saying I had started doing this, and we were talking about Patreon and how that works, and you said, "I also just gave them a PO box for people to send money," and I was like, "Oh, okay," and I did that. because some people just felt more comfortable. Some people emailed me and said, I don't want to use Patreon. I don't want to put my stuff on the internet. And I've gotten like handwritten letters with like $100 bill in there.
Isn't it the best?
It's unreal. And this is these letters, and I've kept all the letters too. I'm so glad you said that, because I'm just like, one of them's on my fridge. And
I have them littered all over my office.
Yeah, because it does keep you when you're sitting there going, oh, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Why am I talking about this? Nobody cares. And then, no, they do care. Yeah. These people do care.
Maybe not the people that I hang out with. Although I'm starting to find out that they're listening to. But it might not be in my day-to-day life. I can't see it. That's the thing about doing something like this. Like, we're talking into a phone right now. And I'm in a microphone. Like, they don't even see me. But they're real people on the other side of it. And thousands of them. So it's just good to remind myself that I'm not actually in this alone, and even though it's really hard to watch, maybe it could get better.
Well, that's the thing. That's what I always come back to, is when I hear all the people paying attention and getting involved and doing stuff. I go, like, just talk to you right now. I go, oh yeah, all right. And I feel like when we're sort of like independent media, truth seeker, progressive, whatever you want to call us, when we find each other, it's always like we were alone, on a desert island, and then you're like, oh God, another human. Oh, like, look, you're not crazy. You're not a Trumper or I'm still with her. Like, they both act sort of equally nuts and closed off to, like, my party's the best, but that other party's awful. And it's like, it's hard to listen to that, because I always. So yeah, when we find each other, it's so, like, when I do all the times I've done the Jimmy Dore show live, the first time I did it, I'll never forget this. It was like April or May or something of last year, of 17. And it was a packed comedy club, and we're making jokes and that are getting huge laughs, jokes that I can't get laughs from in a regular comedy audience.
Yeah. And
then just making a point that's not even funny, and people like cheering, and I was like, oh. And it goes against, the audience is not just a bunch of millennial burn bros. It's like men and women of older women who the media told me they only support Hillary, and you millennial women don't get the struggle. Like, all those bullshit lies that the corporate media, I've seen in person, going, oh, this is nonsense.
Yeah, these categories are bullshit.
All bullshit.
Yeah, that's why I won't label myself. And it's the thing that makes people so crazy. Like, I'll go on the radio, and they'll be like, so are you a liberal or conservative? Like, let's put you in a box right away. And I'm like, no, I'm not answering that question. I'll answer anything you want, but I'll answer personal stuff. I don't care. That's the one question I won't answer, because you're not putting me in a box. I'm not going to be put enemy or friend right away. Like, I'm an American. You can talk to me about any issue you want, but we'll talk about this issue, because I'm allowed to think that maybe there should be a limit on abortions. And I'm also allowed to think that, single-payer healthcare is the obvious choice. I can have those thoughts in the same brain. It's not. Yeah, and that's what I'm learning through this too. Is that we're told that we all fit into these two different categories. But even looking at the numbers, which I never really did before, when you watch the way we vote, there's about 25% that always vote Republican. There's about 25% that always vote Democrat. And then there's the 50. There's about us over here that just don't feel represented by any of it. We're kind of making the best call that we can, but not feeling like we belong anywhere. These are my people, and we outnumber them. So, yeah, and the other thing is too, even the people in these two categories, the people that always vote Republican or always vote Democrat, there are also people that can change their minds. If my dad was always voting Republican, he didn't last time, and it's just,
I think too, the thing it's such a great point is so many people have more, like, when I talk to Sam Ronan, who's running as a progressive but as a Republican, because he's running to unseated incumbent in a very red district in Ohio. Genius. Yeah. And he goes, because he knows if I knock on a door in a red district and I'm a Democrat, click, done, out. Yeah. He goes, but I'm as a Republican. He goes, I'm here for workers' rights. I'm here for $15 an hour. I'm here for single-payer health care. I'm here for, and they're like, yeah. I'm here to cut the military budget. We need to spend more money at home. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's such a great point that you bring up, and that's the thing I've learned from doing this too, is there's people on either extremes, but even even they might actually agree on more stuff than they think when you, as you say, take the labels off. That's so great, because if you're on the radio as the liberal or the conservative, click, don't want to listen. If you come in and say, I'm not any of those things, that's a great point, and that's a great tactic, I think, to use.
And it's working. Like when I look at my letters and stuff, and it's so funny how people will label themselves in the first sentence every time. Not every time, but it happens a lot. And there were so many people like, I'm a conservative from Mississippi, I'm a liberal from California, I'm a liberal from Iowa, and they'll tell me their labels. They're all over the map. Like libertarians and like it's all over the place, and yet I'm able to find common ground with them just because I'm not participating in the labels.
Well, that's by design.
It's beautiful.
I think the system, they want us to be divided in labels.
Yeah.
Because if we all got together and go, as you say, I don't want you spending my money and your money and our money for this, we all would agree.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, oh, there's no money for single payer healthcare. When you spend $700 billion a year on war, there isn't. If we cut it in half, we would still outspend Russia and China. And we could have $350 billion to schools, roads. I mean, like, it's not even funny how much we could do with this country and how great it could be, you know?
Yeah. And I think we agree on much more. I say it a lot on the show, but we're not as divided as they tell us.
Right.
We're really not. And that's one of the things that also gives me hope, that it's a lesson I don't think that I would have learned without doing the podcast. I think that I would have felt like we're really divided, because if you watch the TV, they make it seem that way. But it's been such a beautiful experience. It's been so nice. And I do so many like libertarian shows, and
awesome.
They don't give a crap that I don't label myself.
That's great.
Yeah.
Because I think people are so starved for like truth and honesty that that's a great way to come into it, is take the labels off and go, here's the reality of what's happening. Like, because if you don't have a label, it doesn't, then there's no like, oh, she's got an agenda. No, this is what's in the bill that is nonsense.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
Yeah, and it's just fiscally irresponsible.
Yeah.
You know, and I can just say that and be like, I believe in having balanced budgets, and this is just terrible. Like, one of the things the Republicans have been doing ever since I started doing this, because they've had the House the entire time. So what they do is they have something called the pay-go budget. So when they spend money, they're supposed to cut and pay as you go. It's in the name. So what they'll do is they'll spend an enormous amount of money, like the tax cuts, $1.5 trillion. They just said it doesn't count towards the pay-go budget. And in the last government funding law, they spent over $20 billion a year on children's health insurance, which, like, fine. They also spent money on the missile defense for the intelligence community. We talked about that earlier. But they spent an enormous amount of money. That didn't count towards the pay-go budget. But the $1 million they saved in not automatically printing the Federal Register anymore, that goes towards the budget. So they're cooking the books. And I've been watching this for years. And how is that fiscally responsible? Like, the words fiscally conservative, they say it all the time, and then they govern like this. And yet you turn on the news and no one's talking about this, even though it's in so many bills. It's right there. And that's why I can't watch cable news. I have trouble in airports because I can't turn it off. And I'm just like, why are you talking about these things?
I know.
There's so many things you should be talking about.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, that's I know. There's so many things, and you're just like, there's still not drinkable water in Flint, Michigan.
Or Puerto Rico. There's 5,000 barrels of oil that leaked from the Keystone Pipeline in South Dakota. This was a couple months ago. Really?
Oh, yeah.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, weird. They didn't talk about that. That didn't come up during the Russia.
Shit.
Every week there's a new breaking Russia thing for the last 18 months. And it's just like, stuff like that. Just,
we could do a whole other segment on this Russia
bullshit. I mean, the Russia bullshit. I mean, the drone strikes we're doing in our name. All the drone strikes Obama did.
Yeah.
I mean, it's 60% of this country doesn't have $1,000 in savings. Yeah. You know, and people like Nina Turner went on CNN several months ago and said people in my former district and all over the country don't give a shit about Russia because they can barely pay their bills and they're working 3 jobs and they don't have health care and insurance and retirement. And people were like, oh, the left jumped on her. And, oh, you're so, you know, it's just like, that stuff is driving me nuts. Yeah, we could do another hour. Anyway, like, Thank you so much, Jennifer Briney from Congressional Dish,
Yes.
for being on the show. So, guys, check out Congressional Dish. It's another great way to be informed. You guys are thirsty for actual, accurate information. Here is some right now for you to get and stay informed. That was a weird sentence, but we're all going to enjoy it.
We all understood it.
We kind of did. We're in a library. Thanks for watching the show. Support the Patreon, patreon.com/Graham Elwood, and all the links to all of my upcoming shows and everything are in the show notes below at grahamelwood.com. Thank you.